Hi, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. Join me as I show you this Modern Mayhem bracelet consisting of right angle weave and some embellishment. We're going to create this with some order and get rid of that chaos, and I'm going to help you walk through adding multiple rows to your right angle weave. If you need any materials, and you can use anything for this design, you can look below the video. In the description, we have a link to get to our website. There we'll link all the exact colors that I used in both the first and the second design that I'm working on for you to gather them up. Let's get ready to get started. So the Modern Mayhem design is based on right angle weave. We are going to be doing 3 rows of 2 drop or 2 beads on each side of our little right angle weave box with 8 OC beads, and then embellishing on the top with a fun collection of products. Whether or not you do it with gold, silver, doesn't matter. We're doing 2 drop right angle weave. If you've never done right angle weave before, you may want to check out some other videos, but I'm going to go over it now for you. So I am using, to create that base, our Dragonthread in our gray color size 8. I have a stop bead at the end of the thread, and you're going to need about 5 feet for the actual base of the design, and then we'll add thread to embellish on top. So to begin that right angle weave, we are going to start out with a total of 4 groups of 2. 4 because we're making 4 sides to our box. 2 because that's the size we want. So we're doing 2 drop right angle weave, meaning we're using 2 beads instead of 1 for each side. I have 8 beads on my 5 foot of beading thread with a size 10 needle, and I'm going to sew back through the first 6 beads. Those first 6 beads are going to be the right side of the box, the top of the box, and then our thread is coming out the right side of the box. So these 2 are the top, bottom, left, right. When we're coming out the right side of the box here, we're going to create another box right beside it. We're going to share the beads that are on the right side of the previous box, and those are going to become the left side of the new box. I'm going to add 6 new 8 OC beads, 2 for the bottom, 2 for the right, and 2 that are going to be at the top. To create my next box, I'm going to sew into the top of those 2 beads that my thread is currently coming out of. That's going to create our box. As we need to expand further along the design and get about 6.5 inches to our baseline here, we're going to go through the bottom of the box, which are the bottom 2 beads. And once again, we're always going to come out the right-hand side of the box, sewing up through and exiting through those 2 beads. We're going to add 6 more beads, 2 for the top, 2 more for the right of the next box, and 2 more for the bottom. Now the thread's coming out of the top of that right side section, I'm going to sew into the bottom. Every other right angle weave box is going to come out the top, then the bottom, then the top, then the bottom. We're doing a series of figure 8s. Now this next box is made, but once again, I still have to get out to the right side of the box. So I'm going out through the top 2 beads, and you want to make sure not to exit here by accident. You always want to sew and come out through the right side of the box. For this one, I'm ending at the bottom, and that new box is established. Once again, 6 beads go on. Go into the opposite side of the beads the thread is currently coming out of. Going then the whole way over through the beads, whether or not you're at the top or the bottom this time. And then once again, always coming out the right-hand side. You're going to do the same right angle weave, 1 row right now, the whole length of the bracelet, which is going to be approximately 6.5 to 7 inches. Our clasp is only going to add about a 1/2 inch to the design. So we're going to imagine that this piece of our right angle weave is the whole length of the wrist. It gets a little bit hard to keep it kind of on focus while we're learning to do our second row. So we're going to do a second row coming down this right angle weave, and we're exiting through the right side of this box, just like we would be to add the next one, but instead of adding the next box to the right, we're going to add the next box below it, or do a second column basically of our right angle weave. I'm going to start by going through the bottom of the box as well. Coming out the bottom of the box, this bottom row here is now going to become the top of row 2. Here's going to be 2 beads for my right side, 2 beads for the bottom, and 2 beads for the left. Sewing back into that top of the box, I'm going to create my new right angle weave box. Now, pay close attention. I'm going to flip this in my hand. The reason I'm flipping this is because it's easier for me to see it and look at it as still once again coming out the right side of the box. So I'm coming out the right side of this second row of box. I have the right side, I have the top of the box, which is going to be the bottom of the previous row. And now I just need 2 beads for the bottom, 2 beads for the right side, and then I'm going to connect all the beads together. Going through the top beads here, which is the top of the box, going down through the left-hand side, closes up the box. So those were the beads that we were currently coming out of. And now we know, just like we did previously, we need to get out to that right side. So I'm going to sew down through the baseline, up through and out that right-hand side of the box I just completed. As I sew out the right-hand side of the box I just completed, I notice, hey, the top of my box is already there. So I'm going to sew through those 2 beads and establish the top of the box. Then what I'm going to do is I need 2 more beads for the right side of the box. So always think about it as a box. I need 2 beads for the bottom of the box. And I'm going to sew back up through the right-hand side of the box, completing that right angle unit. From here, you can ignore the first row completely. You are going in and just continuing the exact same style. Sewing, whoops, sorry, wrong way. Sewing back up through the top of the box. And then once again, down that right side of the box. So now we're down at the bottom of that box, coming out the right-hand side. I need to add 2 beads for the bottom, 2 beads for the right of the box. After I have the bottom and the right on, I'm going to connect to the top of the box, which are the 2 beads that are already there. And once you learn to do this second row, third, fourth, fifth row, however many you want to do, it's the exact same. I'm then going to sew down through those beads. So I'm back at my starting spot. And now I need to get over once again to the right-hand side of the box. This time when your thread comes out the top of the right side, you know the top of your box is already there, so you can sew right over to it rather than adding more beads for the top. Then once again, sew 2 beads for the right side, 2 beads for the bottom side, and then back up through where your thread was originally coming out. Once again, take your needle and thread through those beads till you get out to that right-hand side and continue on. You'll notice now as I finish this second row, I'm going to do the exact same thing to start the third row, adding those 2 beads, finishing up the box by sewing back down through the left hand, and then circling over to continue on. So I'm coming out the right-hand side. As I sew out the right-hand side here, my top is already there. So I'm just going to sew over through that top, which was the bottom of the previous row, 2 beads for the right, 2 beads for the bottom, back up through that left-hand side. Once you're through that left-hand side, normally we go the whole way to the right, through the left, and we're coming out that right. But remember, just like we did previously, we're going to add our next row on. To add our next row on, we're going through the base of that box, and that gets us ready then to do our third row onto the design. Once you finish with your base, and your base will be again about 6.5 inches to 7 inches depending on your wrist, you are going to embellish the top. So I'm going to show you on a smaller section here how to embellish the top and how to add the clasp to your design, whether or not you're doing seed beads or crystals or check glass. I have here some different colors. I made the sample piece, and then I want to show you some different colors just so you can kind of keep track of the beads as we're working with it. And then look at these beautiful bugles and 2mm and 4mm bicones that are listed as part of the design in the bracelet. And then the same with this beautiful Potomac crystal clasp that really kind of makes it. So how are we embellishing the top of this? It looks like mayhem, kind of looks like patchwork, and I thought it was definitely named wonderfully in Twitch. So I like that I can hold on to this small piece and just show you the examples if you want to try it out rather than having to go through and make a full bracelet right away. So the easiest thing to do is going to be to embellish with one 4mm crystal or 4mm round. I'm coming out the last of my third row of my right angle weave, and I'm coming out the right side of that, we'll say the top of the box. I'm going to say right side. Coming out the bottom of the right side, I'm going to go in on a diagonal to the top of the left side and naturally pull that crystal right in place. Whether or not I do a 4mm crystal, or if I take two 15-0s and add a 3 or a 2mm crystal, you're going to get kind of that same effect by taking it nice and easy to the side, almost like the Gatsby bracelet. Changing it up a little bit, what happens if we want to make a nice squared unit? Whether or not we're doing squares with 2 of our delica beads, or doing squares with with our bugle beads, or doing squares with our seed beads as well. You can do this with all of them. I'm exiting the bottom of that right-hand side, and I'm going to pick up one 3mm bugle. I'm going to sew back into that same section of beads from the top toward the bottom and out. What that's going to do is put that bugle basically lying right on top of that group of 2 beads. From here, you're going to sew through your next side of that right angle weave unit. So we started out the right side, we sewed around through, and now we're coming out the bottom. Once again, add a bugle bead, and you are going to sew from the right to the left-hand side there, adding again that bugle on the top. Guess what? You have 2 more sides to your box. We're going to do the same thing. Sew through that baseline of that right angle weave. Right on top of here, add your bugle. Sew back through those same beads. Make that bugle kind of sit right on top. Spin around through the last side of that same right angle weave box. Add your bugle. Sew back through that same side, which is going to be the top of this box here, and let that lay down. Now what we're going to do is go back through all those bugles and connect. So I'm going back through the bugle I just added, and then we're going to stay to the top. You're going to go to the next bugle over there. So through the bugle. So through the next bugle. You can add 11 or 15-0s in between them if you want to. Add the third bugle here. And then go back again through that first and connect all 4. You can see you get a nice little kind of fun box that sits right on top of that right angle unit. To complete it, I'm just tucking down right away, back into that right angle weave, going through that side of the bugle, coming out and coming back into the next portion of the design. From here, we're going to stitch up and do ladder stitch. So why not? We're doing a little bit of right angle weave, we're doing that diagonal stitch, and now we're going to do some ladder. So for my ladder, I'm going to grab 3 delica beads. And I like to use a lot of beads that I have on hand. I'm going to sew through that line again, just like we did with our bugles, letting those 3 delica beads lay right on top, almost like a second layer of that right angle weave. From here though, rather than going into another side of that same right angle weave unit, I'm going to sew back through those 3 delica beads. I'm going to add 3 more delica beads and sew back through the 3 that are already there. Letting those new 3 lay right on top. And you'll notice that it just kind of sits off the bracelet. We're going to force it to sit down after we add the third row. I'm then going to sew back through the 3 my thread was coming out of, or sorry, the 3 that I just added. Sometimes you can get a straight shot, sometimes you can't. I like to kind of pinch the beads and hold them together. And you can see, just like a ladder, I'm going to bend this to the side, you basically have rungs or rows of beads. You have the 3 that you connected to the 2 seed beads that are one side of your right angle weave. Then you have 2 more or 3 more that you connected to the next row. And now we're going to do 1 more row of beads. So 3 more delicas. I'm coming out the right side of those delicas. I'm going to sew into the left side of those delicas, doing that ladder stitch. Those 3 beads will lay right on top, and then I'm going to sew back through the 3 beads that I just added. Now you can keep going and going and going if you want with ladder stitch, but instead we're going to lay it so it sits right on top of our right angle unit. To do so, we're going to bring this ladder, which we were building up, and my thread is currently coming out the right hand side, or sorry, the top of that ladder. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom of the left side of my box. Then take my thread and needle back through that last row of the ladder stitch to fully attach it to sit right on top of that right angle weave. From here, go down through your left side of your box, and you're ready for another style and another version of adding beads and embellishing on top. So to embellish on top, what are some other ways that you can do? You can use seed beads. So I'll use some 11-0s here to create my box. It's going to be a little bit smaller. So I'm coming out of my right side of my box. I add 2 beads. I'm going to go down my left side of my box here, adding 2 beads. So instead of bugles, I'm doing the same thing with beads. I'm going to go through the next one here. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to see with the brighter beads. Doing this collection of times. And then after you have that last group of 2 in place, you're going to connect them all. But instead of connecting them all just right away, I'm going to sew back through the 2 that I just added. And then I'm going to add a 15-0 seed bead in between. So we'll add a 15, oops, just 1, and sew through the next 2 beads. You can also change up on the ladder stitch, adding in bugles and seed beads as well. The reason that this is called Mayhem is because you can use anything to get all of this embellishment in line. You can see I'm just sewing through the sides here, adding 1 15-0 in between each of my 2 beads. And getting almost like a little quilted look on top. From here also, I can go in if I want to and even embellish in the interior by grabbing one of my 3mm beads and going on that diagonal from one side to the other, going through the beads that basically created a whole new right angle weave unit. That bead then sits in the interior. You're going to come down on the design and basically figure out, just like we did with the right angle weave, how am I getting to the point that I'm ready and out the right side of the bead to embellish and continue on with the look. So many design ideas that can be used and made, filling in the boxes with gemstones, check rounds, faceted rounds. You can see here creating 4 rows of delicas for that ladder stitch, going in with delica beads, bugles, and 11-0s and filling in that middle, and really having fun with the design, even doing boxes where we're doing 3 15-0s, a bugle bead, 3 15-0s, and really getting out a bunch of beads, a bunch of seed beads in colors that you like, and going to town creating this design. As I said previously, you're going to get to a point where you need to add thread. You're going to have 5 feet of thread. You're going to use probably about 10 feet of thread for this whole project. So how and where are you going to add thread to your design? You want to add it towards the interior of the project where you know that you're not really going to see it because of all the embellishment that's going on. The nice thing with this design is you can kind of add it anywhere. So I'm going to take my thread and needle that I've stitched over here, and I'm going to have it end in the middle of one of my right angle weave rows. I'm grabbing a new piece of thread, And I'm going to tie the new piece of thread around the older piece of thread. Tie a nice tight loop and then push it all down towards the center of the design. From here, I'm going to tie the two thread ends together, right over left, left over right. And because of the nature of the bracelet, I'm not even worried really about tucking in my thread ends. I'm just going to put my needle on my new piece of thread, burn these thread ends down close to the design so it's kind of flush with it. And you've got silver thread, gray thread with silver beads. You're never going to see it. I'm going to go back down through the rows and embellish with all of these different ways to embellish the right angle weave. You use up some colors, use up some beads, and grab this nice patchwork look. Once I finish up this little sample square, I'll show you how I added the clasp to the design, starting with the oval side. Once you're done with your embellishing, you can see how fun it doesn't really matter what you pick up. I was kind of cleaning off my bead mat between the two designs. It's time to attach the clasp. Now, the one section is really easy because it's just loops, and it's done the exact same way as we're going to attach this bar section. Now, why is it the way that it is? It's because you need enough space to put that little lever down. That's why these go one way to keep you nice to the project, and the loops go the other way to attach to the other side. Now, I think the more difficult, and the one that Anna didn't show during the Charleston, was how to attach the crystal portion or that clasp. So I'm coming out of my last section of right angle weave after doing my embellishment, and I'm coming out, instead of through those two beads along the end, I'm coming out between the two beads. So I just came down through the first bead. I'm going to grab that first loop, and notice how I'm on an angle. I'm going through the first loop, and then I'm going to sew through the second bead. When I'm out there, I'm going to sew through the second loop, again on an angle. If you're using beading wire or beading cable, you can do it right like that too. Skip over that stop bead, sew through the next bead. So all I'm doing is sewing right down the line of those seed beads that are right at the end. Next through the next one, again, whoops, on an angle, through the next bead, and out. So you're just attaching basically to those 6 beads that are at the end, sewing between each to get these 5 loops connected. Through the next bead, and then when you get to the end, guess what? We reverse the thread and we reinforce. So it's almost like a zipper right there. I'm going to tighten it up and pull it nice and close to the clasp. And I love, this was the intention of this, to get nice and close to the clasp. Coming down then through the last bead, I'm going to completely disregard the whole fact that you're going to see a little bit of thread, and I'm going to reverse and start going the opposite way. Through the loop, through the next bead, through the loop, again on that angle is the way that you're going to get in there. If you need to, from the front to the back, go through, then through your next bead, and so on and so forth. So you're literally just sewing down the line, attaching the clasp till it's nice and added, flush and easy with the design. You can see you can't even see the thread that's attached on the back because of that nice thread line fitting perfectly in between those 8/0 seed beads. When you flip over to the other side and create, you're doing the same thing, except you're looping through the loop that's on the tongue portion, back through the next bead, looping through it, through the next bead, through that hole, through the next bead. You've got 5 loops here, and you also have 5 on the other side. And I love all the crystal options that you can add in to these designs. If I wanted to add a nice green ending to that one here, I have my green, I have my aqua, and I even have that fun look of the Sphinx going on with these bracelets. And I love that the Potomac's oval clasp really is useful as the centerpiece of this fun mayhem design that wraps around your wrist with that center crystal to the top. Thanks so much for joining me in the creation of this Modern Mayhem bracelet. It is so cool to see the Potomac crystal oval clasps in form and really used exactly how they should be as the statement of a great piece. Remember, if you make any modifications or have any design ideas, you can comment below and let other Potomac beaders know how you embellished and any size differences that you made in the base or seed beads. Remember also, if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for our next inspirational video.